Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday. I hope that you all are having a great day and a great week. What a week it has been. So, I'm just sending positive energy and love out to everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Joelle Simone Maldonado. I'm also known professionally as the Grave Woman. I am a licensed funeral director, embalmer, sacred grief practitioner, insurance agent, and death care educator. And I am also the founder of the Black Death, Grief, and Cultural Care Academy. And welcome to Death and Grief Talk Live. This is a forum for us to just talk, to chill, and to just have open and honest conversation. I want to ensure that everyone can hear and see me okay. So if you can, please type yes in the comment section or thumbs up, something just to let me know that you can hear and see me okay. It has been quite a week, you all, and I have been meditating and praying on what I wanted to talk about and what I wanted our theme for this week to be. And what came to me today was that Spirit always meets us at the level of our understanding, especially in our journeys, in our death work, in our grief work, and in just everything that we do. And particularly this week, I would like to talk about holding space. But before I do, I'm going to catch you up a little bit on what's been going on with me over the past week. So, for those of you that were here last week with us, you know that we had an amazing time. We had a great conversation about gratitude and our grief and about just being thankful and having the full experience of grief, not just the sad and the torturous parts that many times are just what are natural to us. And so, about an hour and a half after I got off live, I was in the kitchen cooking, passed out, fell out of a chair, passed out. I didn't know what was going on and had to call 911, rush him to the hospital. Thank God he's okay. And we're having to catch up and find out what's going on with him. But that experience led me to just think about how grateful I am for everything in my life, my husband, my family, this work, you all, each of you having the platforms that we've built over the past few years together. And so as the week progressed, Tuesday got a horrible piece of news that a very close friend of mine, her partner, passed away. And that ties into, because not only is she a very good friend, she's a very best friend. So the Grave Woman community, we're sending you love and we're sending you just support online. But I no longer live in the same city of her or as her. And not being able to be there with her and to console her physically and to be of comfort physically and to just do the things that we do when someone passes away to show support in community, it really was pulling a lot on my heart. But what Spirit revealed to me and met me at the level of my understanding was that you're able to hold space for someone in multiple ways. And so the term holding space was something, honestly, I did not hear until the year 2020 during COVID, when a lot of the death doulas were doing a lot of lives and education online. And it just sounded like such a deep and holistic and just cool phrase, right? And I really didn't use it at first because I didn't know what I meant. But after asking a couple of questions and listening to people and learning, I found out what holding space is. And so holding space, as I understood it prior to this week, was just basically being there for someone and basically just being an open vessel that can receive, right? And this week, I've learned that holding space takes on so many more forms than I was under the impression that it did. So, holding space is something that anyone can do. And when I say anyone, I mean absolutely anyone. Your pet can hold space, humans can hold space, I can hold space, a child can hold space. And what holding space is basically, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my note. Holding space presents itself in a variety of different ways. And the thing is that grief brings up so many things when someone dies or when we're experiencing some type of loss. Grief brings up so many different things within us. And we tend to, as humans, pour out, right? Whether emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever. But we have to understand, and I promise this is all going to make sense by the time I stop chatting, but we have to understand that holding space is something natural that we all can do. It's something that it you can be taught how to expand your ability to hold space, but simply having a conversation with someone is a method of holding space. And in order to dig a little bit deeper, I want to talk a little bit about specifically when someone passes away. When someone passes away, our relationships with grief are as unique as there are people, because we all have different relationships with people, and those relationships represent something different to everyone. And when people pass away, those that are left behind, the loved ones that have left behind, they've lost confidants, they've lost providers, they've lost protectors, they've lost playmates, partners in crime, safe spaces, sexual partners, you name it. The list can go on and on and on. And those relationships within those dynamics look different for each and every person on this earth. And so when you're holding space for someone, they're simply listening could be holding space, right? Like someone needs to talk about what it is that they're experiencing and the loss itself, or not talk about it. Like simply talking about absolutely everything other than the loss that has occurred is a form of holding space. Acts of service, doing things that would help out and perhaps not necessarily replace that thing that was done by the person that has passed away, because there's no way you could replace that, right? But just stepping into that moment when someone is vulnerable and performing certain acts of services or service. For example, cleaning, cooking meals, ordering groceries, um, anything that you could think of, anything that a person would do, sweeping a front porch, blowing snow, or just stepping in and doing those things for a person while they're grieving or while they're vulnerable is a form of holding space. Touch is a form of holding space. Giving someone a hug and physically embracing and almost metaphysically taking on some of their energy, not necessarily taking on their grief, but allowing them to become weightless in your arms through touch or through massage or through helping someone with their grooming. Just physical touch is a form of holding space, or can be a form of holding space. Asking questions, asking things like, what do you need? Many times when we lose those that we love, it's almost like our brains, I don't want to say become non-functional, but we're so overwhelmed by everything that has to be done and by having to make announcements and call people and social media and respond to people's questions and text. So simply asking something like, what is it that you need help with? Many people, a lot of times, don't know how to ask for help. So by taking the responsibility of asking for help away from someone, that's a way of holding space, because you're now eliminating that pressure from them not asking questions, especially if maybe you're uncertain about what caused the person to pass away, or if there are details that may be private. Respecting privacy and encouraging others to do the same is a form of holding space. Small talk. I know a lot of people, myself included, in everyday conversation, I try to avoid small talk as much as I can. But when you're holding space for someone and you're showing up for someone who is vulnerable and in grief in a moment, sometimes the small talk can be the most beautiful part of their day, because for just a brief second, they are not thinking about everything that possibly has happened. Or even if they're thinking about it, it's not in the forefront of their mind for just that brief second. So, talking about things like the weather or current events or celebrity gossip or things that have nothing to do with the reality that they're experiencing. And if they're allowing them to bring things up, not pointing out every single detail. I know for me personally, as a funeral director, I listen to what people say and I'm thinking, that didn't sound right, or that's interesting. And my first thing to do is to want to ask questions, to investigate and find out, well, why was this done this way? And I do that as a form of protection and of service. But sometimes, especially us as death care workers, taking off that professional hat and just putting on that friendship hat or that partner hat or that family hat is important in the moment. I mentioned cooking before, but I don't think we realize how much food is important, especially when someone is grieving. A lot of times when people are experiencing grief, they're not thinking about whether they've nourished their bodies or whether they've eaten or drank water. So, preparing a meal for someone, taking that burden off of their shoulders or taking that responsibility away from them and just having a meal prepared or sending food. We live in the day of Uber Eats and DoorDash, sending food and saying again, asking, have you drank water? Have you done this? Such and such and such. Gifts. Some people, and it, when I was thinking about these things, I was thinking about the love languages. So a lot of this kind of crosses over, but gifts don't always have to mean you go and buy somebody something in a store. Monetary gifts are very helpful. It was expressed to me today. I mentioned my friend. She said that she had received some monetary gifts, and she wasn't expecting that. And she said that the person who sent her the gift said, people normally send flowers, but when I guess someone she loved passed away, sending money really helped with unexpected expenses that do come up when someone passes away. And so I learned something through that because I hadn't necessarily thought about that. Helping. And I just mentioned not over helping, but there's certain things that we can help with. Like, I mean, common sense things. If you know that someone has to run errands to prepare for a service or to just run errands, stepping in and saying, why don't you let me do that for you? Or asking, is there anything else I can do for you? Helping is essential. Encouragement, just words of affirmation. This is hard right now, but you're strong and I believe you'll get through this. Or this may not be what is ideal right now, but you're going to be okay. Words of affirmation, letting a person know and reinforcing to them the good things about themselves, the good things about the person that passed away. I know a lot of times when someone passes away, we can sometimes focus on what we didn't like or how things didn't go a certain way, but reinforcing that positivity. No one wants to hear anything negative about their loved one when someone, when they've passed away. So reinforcing the positive. Something that I don't think that we give enough credit to, especially in modern age, is prayer. Simply praying for someone and praying for their family, praying for their loved ones, praying for peace, praying for comfort, having conversations about God or with God or spirit or whatever you believe to be your higher power, praying with that person or just simply for them if you're not comfortable praying with them. Talking to God and petitioning on their behalf, standing in the gap spiritually is a huge thing. And again, offering help. And so I'd like to ask a few questions of you all. Who has held space for you and how when you've experienced the loss or have lost a loved one? I remember when my grandfather died, his fraternity stepped in a lot and took care of a lot of things. And helped out with a lot of things. We also had some family members. My grandfather had a lot of like property and a lot of like, he had like dump trucks and tractors and vehicles, like just things like that. And at the time, my grandmother, my mom, nor my uncle, we were dealing with the loss of my grandfather, and no one necessarily knew what to do with those things. So some of his fraternity brothers and cousins, or his nephews and things like that, stepped in and really helped my family either sell those things, or, we didn't know what to do with that stuff. Um, when my uncle passed away, my aunt, who's a funeral director, I know she was extremely overwhelmed with his loss, but she stepped in a lot of ways and really handled things and held space for my grandmother, my mother, my sister, and I. Even though she had just lost her husband, she and her family stepped in a lot. Another question is, whom have you held space for and how? For example, right now, this Death and Grief Talk Live, my intention is to hold space for conversation and to hold space for death care workers, for anybody who comes across this video, for those that are mourning or in grief, for those that are simply curious. And to me, it feels, it's a level of fulfillment. And I think that's another thing that we don't talk a lot about in our industry, is the fact that a lot of times we're very much so givers and don't know how to necessarily receive. And so being able to give something and then receive things back from you, like comments or encouragement, it really helps. It's very helpful. It feeds me. I've always heard performers say when they're on stage, their performance is sometimes influenced by the energy they receive back from the audience. And that definitely makes sense. For example, there are no comments right now, which is completely fine. But when there's comments and there's engagement, it makes a big difference. So keep that in mind and leave some comments. And my last question is, what does holding space look and feel like for you? Personally, for me, I'm thinking about when I've lost someone that I really loved. Holding space just meant, for me, it looked like just allowing me to be vulnerable. I shared last time that when my grandfather passed away, he was a stoic person. So I felt like me falling out and being emotional, it just would not have been the best way of expressing my grief and my loss. Thank you so much, Priscilla, for the comment. I think those are hands. Thank you. But I did have moments where I fell apart, and just my friends and family that allowed me to have that moment without judging me, and then snap back into reality, pull myself together and keep it moving. That felt good, and that was a form of holding space. So on the opposite side of holding space, there is emptying space, especially for us as death care workers, and I imagine healthcare workers and uh, what are the clergy, people that constantly hold space for those that are experiencing loss and grief. You only have so much capacity, right? Like anything, like this bag of almonds right here, right? I could fill this bag of almonds up to the brim, which it was last night. But eventually, if I keep putting stuff in here, it's the zip is gonna tear and the almonds are gonna start to come out. And the same thing happens with us emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, when we're holding space for someone. So how do we empty space? What is All right, we lost connection for just a second, but we're back. We were talking about emptying space. And I think the first part of emptying space is recognizing that we all have a capacity, and you have to decide what that capacity is for you, what that looks like. And you also have to recognize what happens when you're approaching capacity. What are your sensors that say, my capacity for taking on the grief of others or for holding space for others' grief is getting, I'm approaching capacity here. So what do I do? So emptying space is emptying space, letting go of everything that we've held for others. And I think there's ways of doing it. Like, for example, we talked about what someone could represent to someone, that confidant, that provider, that protector, that playmate, that partner in crime, that safe space, that sexual partner, that business partner, that best friend, like all those roles that we assume in relationships and in engaging with one another. It's important to understand that you, as the person holding space, you're not replacing that person. You're also incapable of holding all of someone else's grief, right? So it's almost like you have to decide going into holding space how much space you have to hold. We talked about capacity. What emptying space looks like is not sharing intimate details that are shared with you. One pet peeve I have, especially amongst death care professionals, is that when people come into the funeral home to make arrangements, or when people are on their deathbeds, and when people are, approaching the ends of their lives, and even the families, there are a lot of private conversations and private things that come up in those moments. And I've seen far too often where death care professionals and others take that as opportunity to gossip about other people. And that's not what I understand, that sometimes people share things with you that are heavy, or you overhear or experience things that are heavy, but that is not an opportunity for you to then go and repeat things that are sensitive or that are personal or that you wouldn't want repeated about yourself. So what does it mean to empty space, and how can we do it? We talked about prayer as far as holding space. For me, I talk to God about stuff. When people tell me things, or I witness things, or things are different or difficult, I really have open and honest conversation with God about it. And for me, that's a form of release. God, higher power, spirit, whatever you want to call it. You taking notes, Priscilla? That's what I do. And I find that to be helpful because of my belief system. I believe that I'm turning over the issues of my heart, or the things that not necessarily burden me, but that might trouble my mind. People share some intimate details on deathbeds and in funeral homes. I promise you they do. Another thing is meditation, taking time. And if you are not a person that believes in meditation, but taking time and just being quiet, sitting with what you've heard, what you've seen, what you've experienced. I mean, just sitting down and being with it for a moment, and not allowing yourself to interject that experience into your reality. And what I mean by that, no one is immune to experiencing grief, but just because someone close to you, or someone with a similar situation as you, has experienced the loss, you don't have to develop a fear of this could happen to me, or this would, this is going to happen to me. But really sitting with something quietly and meditating, and again, practicing that gratitude that we shared last week, sitting with things and meditating. Another thing that I found very useful is therapy, going and talking to mental health professionals about whatever. Again, people share some heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. In death care, we see some heavy, heavy, heavy things. And having an outlet like a mental health professional, not only to just release those things, but to also incorporate tools that help us to sustain and recognize capacity, or recognize when we're experiencing burnout or compassion fatigue and things like that. Things we've talked about here on the YouTube channel before. Their videos from a few years back. So just thinking about those things. Yes, Priscilla, therapy. I mean, I think every person that works in the death care industry should at one point in their career, multiple times in their career and their work, have mental health resources available to them and utilize those mental health resources. So it's very important. Another thing, and this is my personal list. I want you to put your things in the chat and we'll talk about them. But another thing for me is nature. I talk a lot about the cycle of life and honoring the cycle of life. And a very good place to see and engage with that cycle is in nature. About a year and a half ago, my husband and I had the opportunity to go to Yosemite National Park. And when I tell you that was one of the best things I've ever done for my mental health in life, it just was seeing nature and time encapsulated in the beauty of that park was just, I felt like everything, and it was a lot of stuff going on during that time. I mean, a lot of stuff, but everything, it felt like a mental spiritual bath, if that makes sense. It felt like everything in life that had happened prior to that moment was, it was almost like a cleansing, a spiritual, mental, emotional cleansing. And everyone may not have, the opportunity to visit that national park, but there's water, I'm pretty sure there's some form of nature or a state park or even a park in your area. Just going and again being still, maybe meditating, maybe offering prayer or engaging with nature in some way, engaging with spirit in some way, is a way of releasing or emptying space. Exercise is something that I am working on incorporating more into my practice of emptying space. But I had a friend tell me a couple months ago, we were having a conversation, and I'm just going to be completely vulnerable. She was like, "Friend, I want you to lose weight. And here's why." She said, "You don't think about it this way, but perhaps you've gained weight because you've been taking on so much from others." And when she said it to me, honestly, I got a little defensive, and I didn't say anything to her, but it hurt my feelings a little bit. But the more that I think about it, if I really look back, the times that I've been the most stressed, I can say that I'm an emotional eater. Or the times where I'm the most frustrated, I can say that I've eaten emotionally. So exercise not only is good for like our anatomy and our physical health, right? But the endorphins that exercise creates, or the physical release of energy, if you want to look at it that way, where take all of this is energetic. You're not, no one's physically giving you anything, right? But you're taking on their energy, the energy of grief, the energy of sorrow, the energy of loss. And it has to exist somewhere if you're holding space. And that space is your physical being, it's your spiritual being, it's your mental being. And so releasing through that physical, my thing is the elliptical, y'all. So I'm running on the elliptical right now. That physical release of energy and that sweat and that just that release, it really helps. It's alchemizing. The sauna is a very, very safe place for me. I love the sauna. I love the heat. I love the mental game of, let me see how long I can stay in here and how much of this I can take. And I love when you sit in the sauna a lot, you pee a lot. I love that release. I love rehydrating my body after being in the sauna, like with water. So drinking water is another good thing. I cannot stand every time Lawrence and I, which Lawrence is my husband, every time Lawrence and I drive by a body of still water, I tell him I cannot stand to see still water. I don't know why bodies of still water exist. It troubles me every time I see still water. And I'm realizing that I don't like still water because I believe water is supposed to flow, like the old is supposed to be replaced with the new. And so think about that with your physical body and holding space for someone, right? How are you going to hold in dirty water? You have to cleanse yourself, like cleanse yourself. So rehydrating yourself, water, tea, whatever, things that are healthy. I mean, we can have other drinks as well, but that water and that tea and the things that are good for you, rehydrating your body, your organs, it's a form of emptying space. And then you will physically empty space. What else do we have here? Conversations with trusted people. I do have a very, very small circle of trusted confidants. I don't necessarily share intimate details about clients or circumstances or things I've seen with them, but just being able to say, I'm really struggling with this, or I had a hard time and I had a hard day, or I had a hard moment, and it's tied to this situation. We all need someone to talk to, like whether it's your partner, your romantic partner, your best friend, your therapist. We have to use our throat chakras. We have to use our throat chakras. We have to, because what happens is if we don't, we'll get sick. Especially as death care workers, we'll begin to get sick because you're carrying all of that energy. And when you don't talk and you don't release it, you're literally holding it all here, and it'll kill you. It will literally suffocate you. So I am going to bring up a few comments. um PS Beloved says maybe a cleansing ritual like a bath with certain herbs to release energy. You know what? I love a good spiritual bath. I really do. I try to take them. Sometimes I do them on a full moon. Sometimes I do them on a new moon. But I love just a bath. Period. But then when you add in the herbs and the salt and the essential oils, and you burn in the sage, and you got the what's it called, Himalayan salt rock lamp, or the flowers, oh gosh, I just love it. And then I put on some binaural beats, some frequencies, depending on whatever it is I'm working with or through in the moment. What a good bath. And then for me, after a good bath, there's nothing like moisturizing with some oatmeal lotion and some shea butter, and just caring for my body in that way. And you're right, it is an absolute release. Thank you so much for that comment, PS Beloved. I also love massages, and I haven't had one in such a long time. I got a gift card from Lawrence for Christmas, and I can't wait. I'm just waiting for the perfect moment, like after this event, and I'm going to just treat myself to a massage and a pedicure. Like doing little things like that are forms of emptying space. Priscilla says being in nature really does help. It really does. I'm so excited. I got my pass in the car, but I got my passport for the national parks the other day on Friday. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go back to Yosemite, and I'm going to go to Glacier National Park, and I'm just going to go to all these different places, because to me, just like I said, being encapsulated in time, standing still in the park, it's nothing like it. Even going to, like, we have a beautiful park here called the Waterfront Park, and sitting next to the water and looking at the bridge and the boats and the kids playing, being around children, just being around their innocence and their love and their energy is a form of release. I think a lot of times as adults, play. For a long time, I forgot how to play, and I'm learning how to play again. So it's something that happened. And especially, I think I can say this because I'm almost confident the majority of us here are women, but we lose sense. And I don't want to get into the whole like feminine and masculine energy, but there's something very feminine and very light about play and being in love and having fun. It just does something for us as women, I believe. Salt bath and being in nature, black glitter emoji. Oh my God, your picture what is that? That's so interesting. What is that? Is that what kind of animal is that? It's cute. Um, that's deep, but yeah, it's hard to see until you see older pics. I'm sorry, I really don't know what you're talking about right there. Can you give me a little memory jolt? I probably said something and you responded. I gotta do that salt bath. Yes. Definitely those salt baths. And salt is a form of release, not necessarily eating it, but like going to a salt room or standing barefoot like on the beach. That's why we feel so good after we stand on the sand in the beach, because that salt is pulling that energy from our bodies, literally. So even if you can't, I know a lot of people have physical restrictions, even if you can't get all the way down in the bathtub, soaking your feet in some salt water with some essential oils and some herbs, it's very beneficial. You just like being hot. Yeah, I love the sauna. Hi, B. Nicole. I'm glad you got to join us today. And I'm just putting up some more of your comments that you shared on the screen. Have I ever tried camping or glamping? Let me tell you something. I want to so badly, but I am terrified of snakes. And I am working my way through that fear slowly but very surely. And I am just terrified that if I go camping or glamping and I see one, that it'll be so traumatic that I won't ever do it again. I also want to very badly get into gardening, but like on my property, there's rattlesnakes and moccasins and ugh, uh, what's the other ones? Copperheads and all those things. And I have, thank God, I have not seen one to date. And I pray that I don't, but I, it's a fear and I'm working through it. So to answer your question, no, I haven't, but I very much so want to. And I would like to go camping in all those parks that I mentioned and then some. It was so interesting. When we went to Yosemite, I'm also obsessed with rock climbers. There were people literally camping on the faces of mountains, right? We would look through little binoculars and see complete camp sets. And then they showed us how they were, or they told us how they were able to use the bathroom up there. And it's like, they are hanging off the side of a mountain in a sleeping bag. It was the most mind blowing thing to see. But thank you for answering that question. I bet that that would be such a release, just being in nature, sleeping under the moon, sleeping on the ground or on a cot, and just, ugh, it sounds like heaven, but I have to confront my fear. I was talking about the weight thing. Yes. Oh my God. So my weight fluctuates just depending on the time of the month and a lot of what, based on what I'm experiencing and dealing and working with. But when she said that to me, like I said, I got a little defensive and it hurt my feelings. But when I really thought about it, number one, I understood that she was talking to me as a friend. She was saying something that was difficult for me to hear. She was holding space for whatever my reaction would have been in that moment. And she was saying something because she wants to see me become my best self, right? Not saying I'm not my best self now, but she doesn't want me to be restricted by anything. And of course, number one, if nothing else, she wants me to be as healthy as possible. But it's very true, especially I think a lot of people that hold a lot of space for others for anything, but especially grief, you can relate to what I'm saying. Ocean water can be so therapeutic. You are so right. I'm so grateful to live in a place. My dog is barking. I am so grateful to live in a place where I have access to the beach and access to various bodies of water. So you're right. It's the Cody. It's the cousin of a lemur. Okay, did I say it right? A Cody? Cute. I've just never seen anything like that before. Um, P.S. Beloved says, I've tried to do a short juice fast recently for a reset. I couldn't hang, but I think a noise fast or a phone fast may help me empty. So I did a juice fast a couple months ago where I did 2 meals per day juicing and 1 meal per day was whatever I wanted. And I tried to do like salad or grilled chicken or fish or something, shrimp, and like a lot of veggies. And I will say it was a reset. If it was a reset for nothing else other than my digestive system, it was a real reset. I love juicing. I have a Nama too. The only issue I have here is that the quality of the fruits and veggies that I get like at Walmart and even sometimes Publix, I question. I'm used to being in Atlanta where I can go to either DeKalb Farmers Market or Beauty Farmers Market really and get the fresh vegetables and fruit. And so that is what's inspiring my desire to grow them myself. I got conquer that fear of snakes though. Um, and really, really get into the juicing. I think juicing, if I could just be like a raw foodie, I would, but I like to eat too much, to be honest with you. But yes, a noise fast every couple months. I'll delete social media from my phone completely, which is why those of you that follow me on like Instagram, you'll notice I'm very inconsistent. Sometimes it's just too overwhelming to do this type of work and then also have to be tuned in with all of the things happening in the world or feeling that rush to keep up with everything. So that's a really good idea. Maybe we can do one collectively as a community. How do you guys feel about that? Let me know in the chat. Just have something on you. They don't like the smell of, girl, what don't they like the smell of? You got to tell me what they don't like the smell of. My mom said turpentine and sulfur, and that's, I believe, is why we haven't seen any. Yeah, we had one in our pool, but I didn't see it. The guy that cleans the pool, he said he saw one there, but I didn't see it. And I'm so glad. I wasn't even in town when it happened. So I thank God for that. That gratitude we talked about last week. That's a good friend, Priscilla says. She might have said it to help her too. I know I didn't see the difference in my weight because I was around people bigger than me, or she could be thinking of your health. Oh, definitely. Yeah, she's a great friend, and her intention was 100% pure. And she also, at the time, she was working on some things with herself as well. So, yeah, you're 100% correct. Black girl glitter emoji says, do you have tips on how to get into death doula work? I'm a visual artist and my work touches on hoodoo and honoring my ancestors as a form of healing. The best tip that I can give you for getting into death doula work, because again, I'm not a death doula, but there's some great resources out there. One of them is Going with Grace. One of them is, her name Lashana is coming up, but I don't know why I can't remember the name of Lashana's school right now. Hold on one second. I will tell you. But Going with Grace is one. A Sacred Passing. That's another. They offer courses and trainings. I know Inelda, and I'll put this in the chat afterwards because I'll be able to see your comments. They are the international, and they have trainings and resources. There's several of them. I will put them all in the chat. So, but it won't be until like after the replay because I don't want to stop to do it right now. I want to make sure I get. So, but yeah, that sounds amazing. And I would love to see some of your art. Could you email me like a link to where I can see your work at thegravewoman@gmail.com, please? Thank you. Priscilla says there's no place like the Cab Farmers Market. You are absolutely right. There is no place like there. And I actually will be there. I'll be going there this weekend because I'm going to Atlanta to attend my friend's partner's memorial. So I'll be there this weekend. If anybody wants to say hi. Okay. Mothballs. Yes, mothballs for sure. P.S. Beloved says, in death work, can you hold space by saying the hard thing and absorbing the negative reaction without being offended? I do it all the time as a funeral director, telling people no, telling people that's going to cost more than you've said that you're able to do, or setting boundaries with people. I'd imagine you'd have to have a certain level of confidence to do any of those things in your work. So it's a lot more difficult when you're first starting out versus when you're like a little bit more seasoned than like in the industry like me. But yeah, all the time. You have to do it all the time. And that space you have to empty. So that's actually a good tie-in to the next question of when is it appropriate to empty space? When is it a good idea? Like, when is it okay to say, you know what, this is my capacity and I need to empty before I can go back in? Because I mean, thinking realistically, you can't just walk out of your job, right? You can't just say, oh, I'm at capacity today, gotta go, even though you can sometimes and you should sometimes. But on an average day, you can't, right? So when is it appropriate, and how do you communicate that you're at capacity? For me, I just say I'm overwhelmed right now. And those that I work with and those that know me, they know when I say that I am beyond capacity at that point. I'm beyond approaching. So I'm granted some space. But it's almost like what they say where you have to teach people how to treat you. You have to teach people how to navigate your capacity. And that is your responsibility as an individual. That is your sacred right. That's your gift. And that's yours to defend. So that's going to look a little bit different for everyone. But the biggest thing is communication, because we can't walk around flipping out on people. We can't crumble, when something happens. We still have to remain professional and personable to a certain degree. But learning how to communicate your capacity, recognizing the signs in your body, like I talked a few moments ago about that throat. I use the chakra system just because it's most universal, but recognizing when your chakras are a little bit out of alignment, or if that's not your thing, when your body is giving you signals. Like for me, sometimes I get boils, and when I get them, I know there's something going on in my body, but also there's something going on in my spirit that's causing those things to show up on my body, right? So being patient with myself, being gentle, the same way that I have to treat that boil. I get them like right here and on my breast, like being able to be gentle with that and be gentle in dealing with it and dressing a certain way so that I'm not, rubbing or causing any abrasive things happen to it. Like doing the same thing with yourself, with your emotions, with your mental health. Thank you for these tips. It's very helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad this stuff resonates with someone. Sometimes I think it's just me, and I know that's not true, which is why I'm talking about them openly. Thank you. Oh, good. I look forward to it. Priscilla says, how does one gain confidence in this line of work when you're feeling drained from dealing with it personally? The first thing I'll say to you, Patricia, is if you're feeling drained from dealing with it personally, you really have to be realistic and ask yourself, is this the right thing for me to do professionally right now? That is, it's again, I'm holding space and saying the hard thing, like one of you mentioned before, but that is the truth. You have to ask yourself, do I have the capacity to take on others' grief while navigating this grief myself? And you have to be very honest with yourself about that answer. Now, as far as the confidence, it comes through trial and error. It comes through making mistakes. It comes through doing it again and again and again, and maybe doing something wrong or maybe doing something right, and learning where your strengths are, learning where you not necessarily shine the most, but where your gifts shine the most. For example, I would love to say that I'm a great embalmer. That is not the case. I can do it, but I would be lying if I said that was where my gifts shine the most. I am a great educator. I am a great talker. I am a great connector. I am great at arrangements. I am great at pre-need. Having the humility and not letting your ego trick you into thinking you have to be perfect or great at all things, and that there's not value in the thing that you are great and gifted at. So a part of that is being in alignment with your gift and getting creative and offering your gift in a way that builds your confidence. And not only build your confidence, you'll know whether you should be confident about it or not, because it'll help people. If what you do and what you feel helps people, you need to be very confident in that. So I hope that answers your question. We are approaching the 50-minute mark, and I know it is also Super Bowl Sunday, and we are all very excited to see Usher at the halftime show. So we're going to end a few minutes early tonight just to give everyone a little bit of time to kind of breathe and, enjoy this Sunday. Priscilla says, I gotta think being in trauma and grief therapy is more of my line of work. Thank you. You're welcome. Again, I was just trying to be honest with you. I hope you didn't take offense to what I said, but it's the truth. But thank you, ladies, so much. A few things that I didn't get to mention about emptying space were that being intentional in metaphysical work. As you guys can see, I have all the things behind me, the crystals, the books, the candles, the sage, the incense. For me, that is a lifeline. However, that's going to look very different for whoever or whatever you do, based on your belief systems, based on what brings you comfort, what brings you peace. So being intentional about and the last thing that I'll ask, or the last thing that I'll say, the question for me about releasing is like, just based on like who I want to be in the world, right? I ask myself, a lot. Where does what I put out go? Or how does what I'm putting out matter? So the question I wrote down was, where does all that stuff go when it leaves me? Right. And when I say stuff, that grief, that thing I've been holding space for others, like where does it all go? And in thinking about that, I had to shift my mindset from thinking of all of those things as being negative or bad or low vibrational, right? Grief is not low vibrational. It's not bad energy, it's not something negative. It's not something bad. So, in thinking about it as that way and thinking about grief as a part of the cycle of life and holding space for that for someone else as a part of the cycle of life, when I release it, a lot of times I'll do my release or my ritual in water or with water or with the earth or in nature, or even if it's not that deep, like if I'm in the car and I'm crying, that's a natural thing to do, right? And crying is a big thing. I used to not like to cry, but I will cry in a minute. Y'all saw me start crying at the end of last week. Like when I feel it coming, I'm gonna let it go because not crying will kill you too. But when I started thinking about it that way, it's like when I release it from me, it can return to the source, and the source can transmute it and offer it back to me, to whomever. I almost visualize holding space a a cord, right? Cord cutting is another thing, but that's a little bit deeper than I want to go right now because we'll have to have a whole nother conversation about that. But I almost see that holding space as a cord that connects us to that person, and knowing when and how to sever that cord is very vital as well. And maybe I don't think that's necessarily a conversation for these platforms, but maybe we'll do like a workshop or something about that. But thank you all so much for your participation, for your questions, for your energy, for your attention. I'm very grateful for each and every one of you. Again, these are my opinions, my insights based on my experience, and I'm sharing them with the intention of helping you on your journey. And I am so grateful that you shared with me. And I'm going to take exactly what you all have said and get something from it. But I just want to say thank you for your time and attention, and encourage each and every one of you again to just take care of yourselves, to hold space, but to also recognize when you're approaching capacity, because I don't want to say self-care, but alignment in this work is very, very important. And when you're out of alignment, especially in this work, not only are you vulnerable, but you're also a risk to those that are vulnerable. So take that into consideration. I pray that your week is full of blessings and goodness and revelation, and that spirit will meet you at the level of your understanding while expanding your understanding. Live life, love hard. I'll talk to you next time.